was deposed back in 1976, Britain took over that project. It wasn't really the tank we wanted, to be honest. This tank was much more the tank that the Army liked. It's called Challenger 2, but actually there's very little the same in this tank as there was with Challenger 1. This particular tank, Armoured Trials and Development Unit, they try all the new add-ons on this vehicle to make sure they're going to work. And one of the things Challenger 2 can do is it can reverse very, very quickly so it can get out of trouble. But one of the things it can do when it does that is it pours diesel fuel onto its hot exhaust. And that creates that smoke screen. And so you can imagine, they'd obviously do that much longer. Very quickly you can make yourself disappear from view from the enemy. And again, very, very important on the battlefield, hiding yourself. The gun on this is what they call a 120mm gun. 12 centimetres across the end of the barrel. So 120mm high velocity gun. See, there's lots of extra bits bolted onto this tank. This is because the Armoured Trials and Development Unit, they're trying out all the latest bits of kit. Basically, their role is to see if they can break it. This is what they call theatre entry standard. And like many armoured vehicles these days, when a tank goes to fight, they add all those extra bits at the last moment. You tend to train on a tank that looks very different to this. So they don't have all that extra armour skirting on the sides, or the caged armour at the back of the tank protected against RPGs. See that it's actually a very mobile tank. Apparently you can hold a cup of tea inside the turret, and the suspension is such you shouldn't be able to spill any. I'm not sure if I quite believe that, but very, very sophisticated suspension, very, very clever gunnery, because the gun can lock onto a target. It doesn't matter where the hull is going, it'll still remain locked on target. So again, it will be in service with the British Army for a long time to come. Now, many of you would have seen inside the museum that tanks sometimes go through what they call different marks, different models. Tried an engine to power a tank in World War II that had enough welly in it. And when they looked at the Meteor engine, it was called the Merlin in the Spitfire, they derated it, they called it the Meteor, and they put it in a tank and gave this tank a tremendous amount of power. The downside of it, though, was it's a very thirsty engine. This thing drinks petrol. About a lap of the arena, we're not far off a gallon of fuel. Now, inside the Centurion, there's 4 crew members. 3 are in the turret. You've got a commander who's obviously in charge of the whole vehicle. You've got the gunner who sits in front of him, who aims and fires that gun. You've got a loader on the other side of the turret. They're the ones picking up the big brass shell cases with the round in, putting them in the breech of the gun. And the driver is right down the front on his own. Holding the ozone layer, burning up some more petrol with our Centurion coming around again. all those Second World War big German tanks inside the museum, they heavily influenced British tank design post-war. The army said we're never going to war again with a tank that is outclassed by the enemy, and hence we always wanted a tank with a big gun and very thick armour for protection. Very, very successful because it did its job waiting there just in case. When it came into service, the real big difference about this tank to the earlier ones is that gun. 120mm high velocity gun, so it's a massively powerful gun. And in this generation, when it goes to fire at an enemy tank, it doesn't fire a bullet-shaped round that we used to coming out of a rifle or a pistol anymore. It fires a piston out the end of the barrel. And that piston is one of the fastest things on earth when it leaves the end of the barrel. The sides of the piston fall away and it leaves a metal dart flying towards the enemy at supersonic speed. And again, you can see some of those metal darts inside the museum. Now normally a tank would never try and expose itself to the enemy by going somewhere as prominent as on top of a mound, but he's just going to show you how mobile a 60-ton tank can be by driving up on top of the mound there. The other thing you can see here is just a good example of how tracks actually work. We see tracks on quite a number of different vehicles. How they really work is what you're doing is you're laying your own road. So what's going on there is the tank lays down the track, you bite into that roadway with the toothed wheel. They're the only ones that are powered by the engine on a tank. And on the Chieftain you can see there at the back, they're next to the engine.